We tried to think about the most primitive information we have regarding our extraordinary experience is that I think we choose the fact that all humanity has always been born naked, absolutely helpless for months, and though with beautiful equipment, as we learned later on, no experience, therefore absolute ignorance. That's where all humanity has always started. And we've come to the point where in our trial and error, finding our way, stimulated by designed in hunger, designed in thirst. These are conscious inputs, designed in procreative urge. We have, plus an enormous amount of, as we learn later on, designed in automated processing of the interrelationships of all the atoms in our organism. We start in then with a consciousness of the hunger, giving a drive to go after and to seek, to experiment. Man having then no rule book, nothing to tell him about that universe, has had to really find his way entirely by trial and error. He had no words, had no experience to assume the other person has experience. He had at first very incredibly limited way of communicating. We now know human beings being on our planet for probably 3.5 million years, with, as far as we can see, not much physiological change, pretty much the same skeleton. And what we can learn of human beings in their earliest recorded communicating in an important degree, people in India 5,000 years ago, China 5,000 years ago, were thinking very extraordinarily well in terms of anything we know about our experience, the way we've been able to resolve the experiences into the discovery of principles that seem to be operative in our universe. I'm astonished at how well the early Hindu Chinese thinker, how well he was able to process his information in view of the very limited amount of information humanity had as of that time in comparison to anything we have today. Just making a little jump on information, as humanity on board of our planet entered into what it called World War I, the scientists around the world have ways of reporting to one another officially, and chemists have what they call chemical abstracts. The chemical abstracts are methodical publication of anything and everything any chemist finds that he publishes information regarding it, which comes in chemical abstracts. As entering World War I in the 20th, what's recorded in the 20th century, is a very arbitrary kind of a counting matter, we had some 100, I think it was 100, I'm doing this off the top of my head, my memory, about 175,000 known substances, possibly almost 250,000 substances by the time the United States came in the war, known to chemistry. But we came out of World War I with almost 1 million substances known. By the time we entered World War II, we were well up into 10 million. And we've come out of it now where the figure is really getting to be astronomical. We can't really keep track of the rate at which we're discovering more. Just talk about differentiable substances that are chemically distinct from one another. Those are typical of the information. Really, it's a bursting rate now in relation to I'm speaking in relation to my own life, one life and the extraordinary numbers of lives there must have been on board of our planet. That the information is in multiplying that rate during just one lifetime indicates that something is going on here right now that is utterly unprecedented, and we're in such indication of acceleration of experience as human beings, the integration of the accelerated, the experienced, to produce awarenesses that are indicative of humanity going through some very, very important kind of transition into some kind of new relationship to the universe, I'd say. The kind of acceleration that would occur after the child has been formed in the womb, taking the 9 months, and then suddenly begins to issue from the womb out into an entirely new world. So I think we're apparently coming through out of some common womb of designedly permitted ignorance, given faculties which we gradually discover and learn to employ by trial and error. And we're at a point where I now have what would also seem absolutely incredible to generations before. I've now completed 37 circuits of our Earth, kind of zigzagging circuits, not straight around, not tourists, just responding to requests to appear here and there, to lecture at universities or to design some structure, whatever it may be. So that is in the everyday pattern that I'm circuiting that Earth. Certainly makes it in evidence that we are dealing in a totality of humanity, not the, or up to my generation, completely divided humanity, spread very far apart on our planet, where my father was in the leather importing business in Boston, Massachusetts, United States. And he imported from two places primarily, the Buenos Aires and India, for bringing in leathers for the shoe industry, which was centered at that time in the Boston area. And his mail or a trip that he would like to make to Argentina took 2 months each way. And his trip to India and the mail took exactly 3 months each way. And it was seemed absolutely logical to humanity when early in this century, Rudyard Kipling, the English poet, said, "East is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet." The very, very rare matter for any human being to make such a travel as that, taking all those months. There were not many ships that could take him there. All that has just changed in my lifetime to where I'm not just one of the very few making these circuits of the Earth, but I'm one of probably getting to be pretty close to 20 million now who are living a life like that around our planet. And very much the whole young world doing so. I keep meeting my students at various universities from around the world, halfway around the world again. They're all getting to be living as world people. So this is a very sudden emergence into some new kind of relationship to our universe that's being manifest. None of it was planned. There was nobody in the time of my father, my mother, as I was brought up, prophesying any of the things I just said. When the year I was born, Marconi invented the wireless, but it did not get into any practical use until I was 12 years of age, when the first steamship sends an SOS that's in distress by wireless, to think of it. Great many miles, and the world began to know the ship was in distress, and ships began to rush to its aid. Absolutely unexpected. My father and mother would say, wireless? Such nonsense. And when I was 3, the electrons were discovered, and nobody talked about that. There wasn't in any of the newspapers, or nobody's interested in electrons, didn't know where this electron was been discovered. I was brought up that the humanity would never get to the North Pole, absolutely impossible, and never get to the South Pole. And our Mercator maps didn't even show anything up here. The northernmost points were very rugged, kind of a line, but you didn't know anything up beyond that. When I was 14, man did get to the North Pole, and I was 16, he got to the South Pole. So the impossibles were happening. Like all other little boys, I was making paper darts which you could make at school. But boys must have been making them a very long time. And we were hoping we might be able to get to flying. But the parents said, darling, it's very, very amusing for you to try that, but it's inherently impossible for a man to fly. So when I was 7, the Wright brothers suddenly flew. And my memory is vivid enough of 7 to remember that for about a year, the engineering societies were trying to prove it was a hoax. It was absolutely impossible for a man to do that. So then, not only was that radio, but when I was 23, which is what you think, I guess many in this room are not 23 yet. When I was 23, the human voice came over the radio for the first time. And that's an incredible matter. When I was 27, we had the first licensed radio broadcasting. When I was 38, I was asked to go on an experimental TV studio program in New York where the Columbia Broadcasting had 70 sets, which various scientists and their board of directors' homes, and they had experimental programs going out, and so they didn't have any money for paying anybody. The man who ran it was Gilbert Seldes, a friend of mine, ran the studio, and so I often appeared on his program, but we don't have television operating in the United States until after World War II. So we're talking about, I was 45 when we had our first television. So this couldn't be a more recent matter. And yet, nobody thought at that time they didn't know you were going to have transistors. They didn't know you were going to have, man was going to have satellites going around the Earth. We didn't know we were going to have radio relay satellites, that we're going to be able to have programs coming out of any part of the Earth, go any other part of the Earth. Absolutely. Now, one of these steps was ever anticipated by any of the others. So that having experienced that, I also have experienced living with my fellow human beings who I find no sooner has it happened than he said, I knew it all the time. I'm not one of those to be surprised. I was sort of in on it, you know. I was a little bit responsible. There was a strange vanity of man, and I think the vanity that he has was essential to his being born naked and helpless and having to make the fantastic number of mistakes he had to make in order to really learn something. And I think he'd been so disgruntled, so dismayed by the mistakes and the errors that he would never been able to carry on. He would just been absolutely discouraged. So that he was given a strange vanity to say, continually sort of make himself exempt, and that he was some kind of privileged and always in. And he was able to then quite clearly deceive himself a great deal. So I find everybody today, so getting the moon, anybody do that, that's absolutely simple and logical. Now, it is obvious and simple and logical, provided you were born, and this has happened in your lifetime. You can see how it happened. I began to realize with that rapid changing going on, which was not anticipated, that what people call natural when I was young, the natural related to a state before these great changes occurred, where we're supposed to stay, we were inherently remote from other human beings. No way you can get the other human beings.